just come on in a minute. There we go. Fantastic. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark Shorts, today's conversation with Juliana Haddad Litterio. Juliana, big welcome to today's conversation.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be
W-
here.
Well, look, we've been trying to schedule this for a little while. We're super excited to hear a little bit more about your story, which is an incredible kind of progression from CFO to CEO, 21 years with Procter and Gamble, multiple markets, CEO Thermacell, and now kind of very active in the board space. So looking forward to picking your brain on some of the inspirations and some of the lessons and some guidance for other people going through their transitions. So maybe just a quick introduction from your side, Juliana, and then we can go into some of the questions and explorations.
Sure. So I'm Juliana Litterio. I was born and raised in Brazil, and I immigrated to the US 6 years ago. But about my career, I like to say I had three phases in my career. The first one was the 21 years at Procter and Gamble in the finance function. It was a typical big corp, hired gun, very progressive growth and evolution. I had the opportunity to work in three countries, different regions. So started in Brazil, moved to Europe, worked in Switzerland for 4 years, and then moved back to Brazil. I was the CFO of the Brazilian operation, which is $1.5 billion operation at the time. And then I moved to North America with P&G. And then after 21 years, I left P&G, and that was my first big transition. And at the time, I moved to my second phase of the career, which is more private companies, scaling up companies, which I love. I was the executive in a mid-sized company called Thermacell, joined as a CFO. We sold the company, had a very successful exit, and then I led the company as a CEO for, to rebuild the team. Typical successful exits, a lot of people leave, and then rebuild the team and then transition into the strategic buyer. And now my third phase of the company is only starting. It's very recent, but it's more of a portfolio life. I want to do boards, I want to do advisory, operating partners, and I'm just figuring it out as we go a little
That's
bit.
amazing. I love the way, Juliana, you think there's only three stages, but I already see about like seven stages that you've kind of been through. But Juliana, maybe a little bit on, there's some amazing shifts. And I think certainly the Latin American plus the European and finishing as kind of CFO North America with P&G, some incredible kind of global experiences you've got there. And then that kind of, so those internal transitions, with that long kind of standing career within P&G, and then that shift outside to Thermacell. So maybe talk through a little bit that first transition, and then we'll go into the other ones, because I think it's such a different experience from such a large corporate to something more nimble, more agile. And maybe talk us through that challenge and what was attractive for you in it.
Sure. So when I left P&G, I took some time and I wanted to figure out what I actually wanted to be as I grow up, right? So I went back to school and I wanted to see what really excited me. And I did soul searching as everyone does at those times. And I realized, and one of the things that affected me a lot, I did a course at MIT and, talked about the three phases of the company: nail it, scale it, sell it. This was how she called. And I love the scaling company. I identified very much with the profile, the activities, and I realized that that's what I love the most at P&G when the business was not as big and was growing, or like when we doubled the business in Brazil very fast. I love that phase. So that's what I looked for. And then when I started looking for a job at those companies, it was a challenge. I mean, I think I had a few challenges. First, I wasn't from this country, right? So I didn't have a huge network. And people look at big corp and say, is she going to be able to
Yeah.
go down to
Yeah.
a smaller business? And I think one of the learnings I had is, I sometimes you might want to be willing to step back to then move forward, and I did that. I joined first as a 1099 or as a contractor in the US for like a fractional CFO to start in smaller companies. I took I was supposed to do a 6 months project and I ended up staying 1 year and a half, but it was my way into
Yeah.
PE-backed smaller companies, and then the opportunity at Thermacell came up, and I felt absolutely ready for it. And they accepted that I was ready for it because
That's
the
great.
learning was very important.
I think that's such an important point. That kind of being open for that readjustment and realignment, like you said, like new market, a lot of question marks. Oh, look, she can do it in a massive multi-billion-dollar organization. Can she do it here? So those questions always come up. So I think that approach is so refreshing that you were so open-minded and knew that that was kind of the strategy to adopt to find those next opportunities, and even being flexible in terms of taking it on that kind of interim contract basis. That's fantastic. And maybe then, Julian, once you were in the role with Thermacell, maybe talk a little bit through, because that's an incredible voyage, the exit, and then the rebuild there. That's fascinating. And obviously kind of getting your first kind of CEO experience there as well.
Yes, it was amazing. I always like to joke that thermostat we should count time in dog years because things happen so fast and so frequent, which I love, right? And that's part of what fascinates me into the scaling companies. So I joined as CFO in May 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, and we were at the moment that we didn't know what was going to happen with the business, and we decided to double down on the growth, and we invested a lot. Media was somewhat cheap at the time. So the business grew really fast. So in less than 2 years, we doubled the business. We did an acquisition. We built manufacturing capabilities. So after that period, the P that owned Thermacell looked at it and said, I think we're ready to sell. So
Yep.
the sale ended up being much more accelerated than we originally anticipated, but it was totally the right call. We got, 7 times cash on cash, which was
Wow, it's
amazing.
great.
Was a very
Phenomenal.
good result. And at the end of the process, like I said, usually when you have a very successful exit, a lot of the executives cash out, and it was the case at Thermacell, sorry. And there was the CEO opportunity, CEO seat was open, so I applied for it, and went through the interview process with the new strategic buyer and got it. And so I had the challenge to rebuild the whole executive team. Like, when I took the CEO position, I had a CFO, CMO, COO, and CCO position open. So I was,
That's
that's a
that's a lot
little,
of heads to fill. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of heads to build and trying to do the job at the same time. But it was an incredible experience because I was able to build the team that I picked, right? And
Yep.
then start from scratch. It was challenging, obviously, the transition, but then you were able to form a new team, very well connected, build a strategy together. So super exciting opportunity.
That's amazing. And at the same time, or towards the end of that, you were also kind of taking the Provator board role. So maybe talk a little bit, Juliana, through the kind of first external kind of board roles that you were getting involved in.
Yeah, so the Provider board was in Finland. We actually acquired a majority stake of it. It was one of my acquisitions, and I stayed in the board as well, together with the minority shareholders, also like complying with the Finnish legislation, all that. And it was very interesting because it was a very small company. We had 5 FTEs.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
building also how a board should look like, starting to create what the processes, what the conversations would be. So very exciting. And one of the things you learn in very small companies, you need to be extremely focused and being clear on the priorities and what the teams will take on and what not, so that we're able to be successful in the choices we make.
That's fantastic. And talk a little bit through now, Juliana, on as you kind of lean kind of fully into that like portfolio stage and building out that portfolio, with these unique leadership experiences you've got, corporate, private equity, exit, M&A, international. You got some incredible kind of blend of experiences there. Maybe share a little bit what kind of roles, challenges you're going to find interesting. And a little bit then, even that mental shift on getting out of that executive and starting to kind of look at that portfolio stage of career.
Sure. So I think what things I find exciting, what boards I find exciting, or even like advisory, I love working with companies to scale up. This was something that I found myself in. I think, I like that space. helping them both identify and prioritize the sources of growth, help find, build the capabilities, think through how to finance them, how to fund them, that kind of work. My experience has been mostly in consumer goods space, and I love the consumer space. I really like it. So anything that revolves around consumer goods or consumer services, I think would be a good fit.
Frank T.
And then in terms of geographies, I think any of the three geographies I have experience in would be very suitable. So North America, Brazil, or Europe, that would be great. And I think private companies would be a good fit. I
Yep.
think also family business and also anyone willing to thinking about either expanding internationally or making an exit, given my experience in both those areas would be
Well,
nice.
we've got some nice snow in Switzerland today, Juliana. So you can
Yeah.
bring your hat and scarf over here. But and I think as well that kind of blend. So maybe I think that's maybe one of the interesting topics to explore when you look kind of 3 years from now, Juliana. What would your kind of board portfolio ideally look like between a PE backed consumer business, a family backed business, one in Europe, one in US, one in Latam, maybe even a little bit. I know you've been quite involved in not for profit as well. So maybe just share with us a little bit what 3 years from now, what the aspirations are for that kind of portfolio.
So I think I'm building as we speak, but I'm thinking maybe two to three between private companies and family business. Would be nice to be maybe two private, one family, or even
Yep.
one private,
Yep.
one family business, and then one more involved nonprofit board. This is usually the easiest one to find. I'm already working on one that I have an area that I'm very passionate about that I'm going to try to
Amazing.
work. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
That's
That's amazing. And I think it's when we work with kind of leaders on that board build phase, it is really that kind of, you really lean into it in terms of those conversations, that networking, and just getting the story out there more and more. Maybe one final question, Juliana. If you kind of look back and I mean, you've achieved so much so young. Obviously, we see kind of, would you have thought you could already be at this board phase of your career like 10 years ago? And what kind of advice would you give yourself, looking back kind of 10 years prior?
yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have. I don't think I thought I expected to be in this situation. I think one of the things is be open to change and try new things. I could easily, and it took me a while. I mean, you said, oh, you're so clear on your strategy to go to, take a step back to move forward. It wasn't like that. There was a bit of a struggle to
Yep.
right.
Sure.
I was struggling to look for new positions, and I think sometimes those transitions are a blessing. I mean, I
Yep.
could have stayed at P&G for another 10 years. I would have had a great career, but it wouldn't be like the one I ended up with. So take advantage of the changes as they come, or drive
Yep.
the changes yourself.
Yep.
Um, the second thing is be open to try new things, and sometimes, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm in an experimentation phase. I'm going to try many different things, and I'm going to see which ones are going to be work better. And I think like going to a contractor role and then to later move into ThermaCell, I was completely out of my comfort zone of ThermaCell many times.
Yep.
It was a much more hands-on CFO role, driving the sale. I chose to be extremely involved in the sale for the learning, so I had a ton of work, as you all can imagine. But it was a great experience. So be willing to learn, try new things, ask advice, talk to different people. I called everyone whenever I didn't know what to do.
Yep.
So I think this is what helps
Yep. No, I
maybe
mean, we
prep
always say
that.
the reach outs that we look at, the statistics always show, look, it's 80% likely if it's executive or board at a senior level, those roles will come through your network or network. So you just got to, put it out there. And like you said, be open for conversations. And we heard it earlier this week in the conversation with Santiago as well, that there's a lot of uncertainty around transition. And you've hinted at that as well, Juliana, when you're going through it, you have no idea, when you're going to land something. So there's a lot of kind of stress around it. But I think, you put it beautifully, like being open for conversations and things out of left field, and you've been able to make it work extraordinarily well and really grab those opportunities that were
Yeah.
presented. So
And don't be like, I mean, I wasn't very choiceful, I would say, because I talked to almost everyone that I had in my network, because you never know who's gonna be the one that helps you. I mean, I
yeah,
think YPO, VEB are great
yeah,
resources, but my first contractor job, I did a cold call, which something I never thought
it's
I would
amazing.
do in my life, and
Yeah,
sometimes that works too. So I think be open to try and just be connected. Being connected is the most important part.
that's fantastic. Juliana, thank you so much for the time this morning. That was such a beautiful share. Really appreciate it. Have a really nice Christmas, and we'll be in touch very, very soon.
Thank you. Same to you, Mark, and thank you for the opportunity.
Such a pleasure, Juliana. Take care. Ciao, ciao.
So bye bye.